But instead, we are going to talk about some recent news, which may affect our channel, given our uh, given a pledge that we have made recently. But
Yes. Now, for all of you who are listening, so somehow we have not yet rocketed from 99 to 1,000 subscribers. So we have been spared actually having to watch this.
yes, we have not had to watch the Acolyte yet. All 8 episodes of it, and there will only be 8 episodes because it's been canceled.
Yes. And there are a couple of interesting things about this just overall.
Mhm.
So first off, so part of the reason we're doing this in lieu of our usual box office talk is outside of just having numbers to talk about, part of the reason we like talking box office is that it's kind of our mirror into what people are actually plunking down their money for.
Yeah,
It's because it just gives you an idea of what's trendy, what's catching on, what isn't, and so on.
it's yes.
So I do find myself slightly in sympathy with the fans of this show who are upset that it got canceled. Um,
Mm.
because if I'm being honest, this show, from the moment it was announced, never had any sort of positive vibes from a huge chunk of the Star Wars fandom.
Yeah, because I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that the showrunner was Leslie Headland,
Yep.
um, who I think she's worked in like theater, like stage theater, and
She's made some TV. Apparently, that TV was at least decent.
yeah, she's more well known for being the assistant to a certain Hollywood producer, who's like one of the biggest scumbags who have ever lived. Uh,
Yeah, a man whose exposure kicked off Me Too and I would say no, Harvey Weinstein.
yes,
Like
yeah,
his exposure kicked off Me Too and arguably did more damage to Hollywood than a lot of other trends that have been happening recently.
yes, yeah, definitely
But a
changed
lot of
how, yeah,
overcompensation.
oh yeah, yeah, very much so. Uh, yeah, in particular with how certain female characters are portrayed.
Yes. Now, mind you, I'm also going to say again, in all fairness, the man deserved to go to prison for what he did.
Yes,
The man did wrong. I'm glad that he's no longer out there doing wrong by people.
yes,
But but if I'm looking at it from this like a metagaming perspective, uh, shows like this can almost be seen as people trying to overcompensate and apologize for past sins.
yeah. And I remember watching a clip from Star Wars Theory where he was watching this episode and or one of the episodes, and he said, "Oh, this is just a therapy session for Leslie."
Yeah, it's funny how much modern material is like that because that's also Tom King's comic books too,
Yeah,
are
and
his personal
yeah,
therapy sessions.
yeah, Star Trek Discovery was a lot like that too. just like just therapy sessions for the writers and the actors. Like, okay,
So, um, but also just this thing was cursed on every level.
yeah,
We have a controversial showrunner.
yeah,
It's being set. It's not even being set in the High Republic, is my understanding. Like it's adjacent to the High Republic, and it has a couple of characters from it.
yeah. I want to. It's what, like 100 years before Phantom Menace. Is that right? Okay.
Yeah, somewhere around in there.
Yeah.
And and but like you can't even benefit. I can't even say Star Wars High Republic presents the Acolyte. Like so, it's like why set it in this time period you're setting, or you're setting up, if you're not going to like try to tie it in.
Yeah. Yeah. That doesn't make any sense. And you got the whole that now again, we haven't watched the show, so like our knowledge of it is really based on like what other people have said about it.
Right.
Um, and so like you have this whole dynamic with the space witches. And yeah, these aren't the witches of Dathomir. These are different space witches, if I'm correct on that.
The other thing that kind of cursed this show is that, man, if you ever wanted to like get a okay, so people have been saying for many years Kathleen Kennedy bad at running Star Wars, yada yada yada.
Yeah.
But it's like, the proof is kind of in the pudding, but it's also in just the sheer number of canceled projects. But you also have, I believe Leslie said at one point that in an interview that she turned in a good Star Wars story. And Kathleen said, "This is a great Star Wars story, but I want a great Leslie Headland story." So she rewrote it into this therapy session. So that means that we could have at least had a middling Star Wars show because, again, working third hand, Leslie does seem to have some talent in writing.
Ouch.
It just is not
Wow,
visible at all here.
man. Oh, yeah, that's man.
I
Come
also
on.
heard that like she was running Star Wars role playing groups for a while there,
Hmm.
and from what I've heard, you almost wonder if she act like maybe she can't write in this milieu because she's too used to not having it be structured properly.
Yeah. It, it, I think she's probably better suited to, I hate to say it, writing dramas.
Yeah.
Yeah, not necessarily, space dramas.
What's also kind of unusual about the announcement is how quickly they've announced it's canceled.
Yeah. The final episode dropped a month ago. Not quite as fast as when Netflix canceled Cowboy Bebop.
Yeah. Like, well, that was like what, the week after?
Yeah. Uh, but yeah, yeah, it's pretty amazing that they pulled the trigger on it that quickly, because we haven't really they didn't do that with like Boba Fett or Obi-Wan or what's that?
So
Um,
we know a second season of Andor is happening.
yeah,
Like
and
we haven't gotten confirmation of
well, I know Mandalorian. They're just gonna do the movie. Um,
right. Yeah, like what was going to be season 4 is getting turned into the movie.
yeah, and
We
yeah,
also like we don't technically have confirmation that Ryan Johnson's trilogy isn't happening.
right. But yeah, but at this point, I think it's safe to assume that it is not happening.
Oh, absolutely. Uh,
Yeah,
but Disney just kind of slammed the door on this thing,
yeah,
which is very interesting. So let's. So my sympathies with the fans of this is also that it is so easy in the internet era to get into a bubble where you assume that everybody has the same opinions that you do.
yeah,
I occasionally have my bubbles breached on a variety of opinions, and I have to think about them. Like, oh, here's my actual Star Wars example. When I was in junior high, the prequels came out,
hmm,
and all of my friends who were Star Wars adjacent just loved them. Like we quoted them, we played with the action figures. We just thought it was so neat. Like even
yeah,
though we'd have a couple little criticisms here and there, but overall, loved the movies. It
yeah,
was not until I got to college that I realized that there were differing opinions about the Star Wars prequels.
yeah. Well, unfortunately, I didn't have that same experience, because I liked the prequel movies when they came out, like you, and then but my older brother, who was in college at the time, thought they were awful.
Okay.
So I'm like, oh, okay,
Right, but
yeah,
it's very easy to get into an online echo chamber.
yeah,
I'm also reminded of I can't remember who said it, but there was a reporter who, upon hearing about Richard Nixon's amazing 1962 presidential landslide, said, "I don't know how he won. I don't know anybody who voted for him."
yeah, yeah.
That's your other bubbles I'm in. I know maybe one person who might have seen Avatar too.
I don't know any. Yeah, same here. Yeah, like I don't know anybody who saw Avatar 2.
And the only reason I say might is because in advance of it, he talked about how much he liked Avatar 1 and was looking forward to it. But then
Mhm.
he like took a sabbatical from work, and it hasn't come up in conversation since.
Uh,
But so what's interesting about this one is that the ratings sucked. Like, I'm sorry, like this thing cost as much. Like, this thing cost more to make than the last Godzilla and Kong movie.
mhm. Yeah, it costs about as much as a modern Disney movie costs. About 200-300 million dollars.
Yeah, like the actual budget was like 180 million,
Yeah,
but it had worse rating than Ahsoka, than Andor. Like it's the new bottom
yeah,
of the franchise.
and Ahsoka was awful.
Oh, that's right. You forced yourself to watch that, didn't you?
Yes, I did. Yeah,
I'm so sorry, man.
yeah,
Well, thankfully we set the bounty pretty high, although there are some possible indications that this thing is about to get the tax write-off treatment.
yeah. I have a little funny story about that. The other night, it might have been Tuesday night, as I was rolling around in bed trying to go to sleep, and this was, I think, right after the news had dropped that the show had been canceled. I kind of went, wait a second, what if this show is like Willow and they just take it off of the platform?
Yeah.
Like, what's that gonna do for us?
It means that we're relieved of our duty. That's what, or it means we
Yeah.
have to resort to piracy.
Yes.
Uh, and the other kind of, so that might be why they just slammed the door on it. Hey, this is canceled. And also, there had been actually okay. So I talked about being in information bubbles. So people looked on the Disney store for the Acolyte, and there were no results for the merchandise.
Yeah. Uh,
Which, however, it occurs to me that I cannot say in advance that there was actually merchandise available on the Disney store. I think there
mm.
probably was because I've heard people refer to it, but can't independently verify.
Yeah, there may have been like apparel and maybe some figurines. Yeah.
Okay, also kind of disproving that slightly, I just did an experimental search here
Yeah.
at the disneystore.com. And let me just go ahead and pull this up. I was, in fact, able to find some T-shirts for the Acolyte. So
Okay.
this particular talking point might have been people gaming the searches, or it could be that like they were in a different section than I was looking at.
Yeah, those aren't even very good T-shirts either.
No, they really aren't.
Uh, yes, and yes, Disney charges $30 for the T-shirts, but if you buy two of them, you can get them for $25 a piece.
By Grabthar's hammer, what a savings!
Yeah, and you get an even more of a discount if you're an annual pass holder.
Ooh.
Yeah, but anyway,
But yeah, so there is a possibility that this just gets yanked, and that
yeah,
would make sense from a financial perspective because they're not going to be trying to sell DVDs and Blu-rays of this.
no,
They're, they're the T-shirts still exist, but I doubt they've sold very many of them.
yeah,
Nobody's watching this. Like I think Andor um, gets saved from this treatment because it was well received by those who watched it, and I'm sure that over time, the people who loved it have convinced others to give it a shot.
yeah. I may even give that show a shot at some point, even though I know what happens to the guy.
Yeah, I mean it's on my to-do list.
Yeah,
Uh, I mean, and part of the reason it still works, even though you know that Andor dies at the end of Rogue One, is that, from my understanding, it almost operates more as a Origins of the Rebellion movie.
yeah,
Like, yeah, but speaking of, this goes nowhere. It doesn't even tie into the High Republic necessarily.
yeah,
It's poor. From all indications, it was poorly written, didn't look good, had special effects, made people laugh with things like fires in space. It
yeah.
looked like they were blowing in the space wind.
Yeah. Yeah, and some of the fight scenes that I saw were questionable.
Yeah, but yeah, so it'll be interesting to see if this manages to stay on the platform, or if they decide it's worth more as a tax write-off.
Yeah.
Because they sunk a lot of treasure and effort into this. The other thing that's kind of interesting about this one, just from a behind-the-scenes perspective, it was, I forget if it was Chapek or which Bob was in charge at the time, but they
Mhm.
basically declared, "Hey, we're not accepting new pitches for Star Wars right now. We're just focusing on what we have." And it's like
Uh,
Kathleen Kennedy like got a wild hair and decided to take a sudden pitch from Leslie and greenlit it right away, as if to go, "I'm in charge of Star Wars."
yeah. That sounds like something Chapek would have done.
Yeah, yeah. So it's just kind of
Yeah.
unfortunate all around.
Yeah.
I can't say that this idea ever had a whole lot of potential, in my opinion. But then again, ideas are easy. It's execution that matters.
Yeah. Hey, the fall of the 11th, the power of one season only, power of no season two, power of many salty Acolyte fans. Yeah, they
Yeah.
are very salty right now. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeesh.
Uh,